Heyo, and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about how I have been feeling a lot of bitterness towards God recently and some of the ways that I have found to cope with it, and ways that I want myself to still be able to respond to God even in the middle of feeling hurt and having this pain that I'm trying to work through and trying to resolve and trying to understand, but not letting that fully cut me off from God or make me believe that He doesn't love me or He isn't good. So things kind of came to a climax for me recently that made me realize that I have been feeling all of this resentment towards God about just prayers that He hasn't answered, that I don't understand why, and that He hasn't talked to me at all about why He hasn't answered them. Like, it's not so much about His answer apparently being no, but it's just about Him, like, literally just not saying anything to me about it. I thought that I would have been physically better by now. Instead, I was still feeling sick, and then I got a really bad cold on top of that and lost my voice, which is why today is kind of the first day I can actually talk normally again. I had felt like I should have been better weeks ago, and that God had kind of led me to believe I was going to be better weeks ago, and then He just wasn't really telling me why He led me to believe that if it wasn't true. Didn't give me any kind of idea of when I would be better, just didn't say anything about it anymore, and also was still not making me better. And so there was just a lot of hurt and bitterness that I began to build up over that, just not being able to understand. So that's been pretty hard the last few weeks. But being in that place of feeling that kind of bitterness, resentment, betrayal of when we feel like God said He was going to do something and doesn't do it, or we're asking Him for something and He's not giving it to us and giving us absolutely no reason why, or not even really a response, it is very easy to come away with hurt and bitterness, and if we don't deal with that properly, that really festers and really easily destroys a relationship with God or a belief in Him. I really don't want to see that happen for me. I don't want to choose to hold on to my bitterness over my trust for God and my relationship with Him. Like, I would much rather follow Him even when I don't understand, or even when there are these hard things that He tells me to walk through that maybe He never gives me the answer for why He treated me like this, but I still want to trust Him and follow Him. And so I kind of just have three, points of advice when it comes to feeling bitter towards God or hurt by Him that I have been wrestling with as I've been feeling this way. And honestly, like, the the overall thing for all three of these would be, don't become so consumed and absorbed in my own pain that I can't see outside of that, because that's really the danger and the trap. We start to believe that this one trial or experience defines our entire experience of God and our entire understanding of who He is, and that gets really dangerous really fast, and lies creep in so easily and are so hard to get rid of. And so the first thing that I really felt God challenging me to do was to find something I could worship Him for, and things that I could still love about Him even as I was wrestling with not understanding why He wasn't responding to me and wasn't healing me or giving me any reason for why He wasn't healing me. Because I remember being at Bible study and we're singing all these songs about, the good things that God does for us, which are true. And there's a place for me to still sit there and sing those and say that they're true even when I don't feel it yet, and to proclaim that on faith. But at the same time, I felt like my heart wasn't able to enter into worship through that, because at the moment I was having a really hard time trusting in the good things that God does for us and the ways that He comes through for us, because I wasn't experiencing that right then. But there was a song that kept coming to mind about how beautiful God is, and I was like, I can love Him for that. I can love Him and worship Him for how beautiful He is, even if I can't right now feel like I can love and worship Him for how good He is or the things that He does and the rescue that He provides for us, since that wasn't what I was experiencing right then. But just remembering there are other aspects to God. There are more things about Him than just this one way in which I feel betrayed. And so I asked if we could sing that, and that was very helpful. And then I was able to worship Him for that, and to set my mind on that and try to focus on things like that I could still feel like were true about Him and could still believe about Him, even as I was wrestling with just some grief and disillusionment in the other area. When I felt like I couldn't worship God for that, there's still so many other things that I can worship Him and thank Him for, and so many other things about who He is that I can love Him for, and I don't want to forget those, and I don't want to get so wrapped up in my one problem that I can't see that. And I think that that's who God is, because He's so much more than just that. The second thing would be not to become so absorbed in wanting this one thing, or in wrestling over this one thing, that we can't see anything else that God is doing for us. I had a moment of realization at work one time. I was sitting there praying, and I was just praying that I wanted to to be better. And then I was praying for some other things that I had resolved that I would try to pray for every day. And I felt God telling me, like, don't you see that I'm answering that? Like, I'm doing this other thing for you that's been a huge burden on your heart for months and months and months, that has settled into your heart that you thought wouldn't ever change, that you really, really want to, but you're still committed to praying about it and waiting for me to move. Here I am literally finally moving in that area, and your response is kind of like, well, I don't care because it's not you making me better. I don't want you to answer that prayer anymore. The only thing that I want from you is for you to make me better. And that's so not okay. Like, that can't be the attitude that I have towards God. I can't dismiss all of his other goodness and all of his other graciousness and all of the other ways that he is speaking and moving in my life and answering my prayers just because it's not the one prayer, the one thing that I think that I need. That is absolutely unfair to have tunnel vision like that and just be completely blinded to everything else he's doing, or see it and just be like, nah, I don't even care, because I'm so focused on this one thing that I want from him that he's not doing for me. I can't be so absorbed in that I can't be grateful for anything else. So I felt very challenged to look for things that I was grateful for, things that he was doing for me, small little things. As much as I felt like the only thing that I wanted or needed was this one simple thing, and I couldn't be happy till I got it, there were still so many other good things that he had for me, was doing for me, even in small things like giving me the breath to breathe every day. And so I felt like he was challenging me to focus on that and find small things to be grateful for, to see that he is moving, that he is good to me, even if I'm not seeing it in this one area yet. And then the third conviction that kept coming to me was, I just kept thinking about Job and how he went through all of this suffering, and for him it kind of was for no reason other than to test his faith in God. And he might never even have known why he went through it. Like, in reading through Job, God doesn't say, who made man? Can you control all the storehouses of heaven? Can you take care of all the wild animals? Blah, 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 blah. And Job says, no, sorry. And then God says, that's right. And then also explains to him, now listen here, Satan came and asked if he could test you, and I said that he could, to prove that you actually love me. And Job was like, oh, cool, interesting, good to know. Like, God never explains why all of that happened. Like, maybe God told him that, but it's not there in the Bible. And so maybe he just never understood. Maybe that was just God's answer, like God being like, are you God? And Job was like, no, sir, I'm not. And I was like, all right then. And that was it. And he never knew why he went through that. And yet that can still be enough for me. And so just remembering, like, God is God and I'm not. Even if I don't ever understand, even if God never explains or justifies his behavior, never shows me why I went through this or why I felt so misguided by him earlier, that he is still God and I have no rights to complain. I want to bring my heart to him and my hurt and my pain and talk it out with him and ask for a response. But if the response isn't quote-unquote satisfactory, that still has to be good enough. The answer that he is God and I'm not ultimately has to be enough for me. And so that was very, very humbling to come to that realization, because that's something that God has always done for me, honestly. And I don't know if this is just something particular that he does for me because he knows that I will appreciate it more, if it's something that's available to everyone. I made a video called, I think, like, The Gift of Sight, where I talked about this and how I do think it's available to everyone. But for me, I feel like in all of my troubles and the things that I go through when I'm hurting, when I'm upset or confused, it's not that I pray and God makes it better and so that's why I'm happy, but I pray and God has always given me some kind of glimpse as to what he could be doing with it. Not that it's a definite, this is why you're going through this, because you will learn this thing from it. Like, that might not be exactly what I learned, but at least, like, it gives me some hope, some imagination for how what I'm going through could be for good, and it makes me so content and so, like, at rest in walking through whatever God asks me to walk through, because I know that it's for something good, and I can feel like, yes, that good thing would be worth it. Even if it's not that good thing, it's going to be something better. And yes, I would rather have that good quality grow in me than not have to go through this trial. And so that's always the way that he's dealt with me before, is just giving me wisdom and insight into why he's doing what he's doing to help me get through walking through the actual thing. And I felt like I was not getting that this time. There was absolutely no response, no explanation, and I did just have to walk through on faith, which was really hard because that has not been my experience for a very long time. But I feel like it just taught me this humility of, like, I don't have the right to know. I don't have the right to understand. It's God's kindness and his mercy to me every time he does do that for me and give me some inclination of what it is that he's doing and the ways that he's at work in my life. He doesn't have to explain himself to me. He doesn't have to justify himself to me. And I just have to accept that he is God and he is good. That what I'm experiencing that moment is his greatest love for me, even if I don't understand why. Even if afterwards, when it's all over and I have the benefit of hindsight, even if I still can't make sense of it even then, that's okay. And I need to trust him, and I need to have that humility to recognize that he is God and that I'm not. And I just kept thinking of what Job says at the beginning of like, shall I accept good from the hand of the Lord and not evil? And I was like, is that really my attitude? No. I kind of feel like I deserve to have good things from God if there's no reason for me not to. If he's not telling me that this seemingly bad thing will be good later, if it literally just looks like a bad thing, I'm like, I don't deserve that. Why should I accept that? Why are you doing this to me? But I really want to have that kind of posture before God of I will accept anything from his hand, and to really, really believe that he's God, and to just bow myself in submission and surrender before him. And it's a very, very hard and terrifying lesson to learn. I had a moment where I did have to surrender that, of like, wow, if I never get over this cold or never get over my morning sickness, this is just something you asked me to walk through forever. Is that okay? And I had to say yes, and I was so scared because I was like, man, but what if God takes me up on that and makes me actually live through that for forever? I don't think I can do it, but I have to say that I would. And it's a very, very scary place of surrender to be, to say that I will accept anything from God's hand, even the things that I'm so scared of that I really, 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 really don't want. But that's where I have to be. That's the kind of surrender my heart has to be in. God calls us to walk a very narrow road, and he asks very hard things of us. He asks everything of us, and sometimes we might feel like he's asking everything from us. Sometimes we don't feel it as strongly, but ultimately he does ask everything from us. He asks us to surrender all of our fears and all of our desires and all of our loves in exchange for him, and choosing to love him and trust him more than anything else, which is so hard, but so good and so necessary. And I'm really glad that he stirred that up in me and brought me to that point and made me have to face that bitterness and resentment. And I hope that it just grows in me that humility to trust him even when I don't see, and to accept what seems like evil from the hand of the Lord, even though I do know that everything that he gives me is perfect love. Sometimes it's very, very hard to see that, and I have to be okay with that, and I have to say, yes, I would still follow, and yes, I would still trust him, even if I never understood. And I have thought that that's true of me. I've known that I want that to be true of me, and now I feel like it is more true of me because I really have had to go through a very hard surrender on that point, and I will keep having more points through the rest of my life where God has me in situations like that, where I have to say, fine, I'll give up this thing in exchange for you, and it's going to be so hard and terrifying, but he's faithful and he's so much better. So those are my 3 little tips for walking through feeling betrayed by God, I guess, and all the bitterness and the hurt that comes with that. And I'd also just say, remember that there is going to be another side to it, that it isn't going to be like that forever, even if it is very, very long, even if it's long as in the sense of the rest of your entire life, is going to be over at least by heaven. So thank goodness for that. And he is faithful, and he is working good through it, even if we don't see. And I look at, again, Job, like, even if he never understood why he went through it, like, how much of an encouragement has that been to thousands and thousands of people ever since getting to read his story and see what he went through. So God at least brought good through that, and humbles the rest of us by the interactions that he has with Job. And that's just such a beautiful book and a beautiful reminder that God is God and we're not, and we have to be okay with that ultimately. Thank you for watching, and goodbye until more interesting things happen.